أوجه نداء صادقا
كل أمل ونجاح.
Good afternoon. You're watching the English newscast here on Future Television. I'm Tamina. These are today's headlines. Last-minute preparations are underway a day ahead of Lebanon's last round of local polls, which will culminate in the north and Akkad. Heavy fighting between ISIS and rebels gripped a town in northeastern Syria after a lightning assault by the extremists cut a main supply route. And more than 50,000 people are trapped in Fallujah as an offensive to push ISIS fighters from the Iraqi city intensifies. Last-minute preparations are underway a day ahead of Lebanon's last round of local polls, which will culminate in the north and Akkad. The national news agency reported that several polling stations across the north began receiving ballot boxes and the required stationary items to open early on Sunday morning for electorates. Tight security was also enforced at the stations. Fierce electoral battles are expected to take hold in Lebanon's second-largest city of Tripoli, the district of Batroun, and Akkar's largest Christian town of Kubayat. Over the last 3 weeks, 3 similar rounds took place in Beirut, the Bekaa Valley, Mount Lebanon, and South Lebanon. Interior Minister Nahad Mashnouk has announced that the municipal elections in the northern town of Turza will be held as scheduled on Sunday. The minister had previously issued a decree postponing the polls in the Pshere town due to local tensions. Mashnouk at the time explained that these tensions could cause security clashes between families in the town, especially after a number of candidates withdrew from the elections. Residents of Turza had filed a petition requesting the delay. General Security has announced the closure of an official North Lebanon border crossing for 2 days due to logistical reasons. The Aboudiya crossing between Lebanon and Syria will reportedly be closed from both sides as of midnight tonight until Sunday evening. General Security has urged citizens, Arabs and foreigners who want to leave through the northern borders to go through the Al-Arida and Ka'a crossings instead. The closure will coincide with Sunday's local elections in the North Lebanon province and the Akkad district. Heavy fighting between ISIS and rebels gripped a town in northeastern Syria after a lightning assault by the extremists cut a main supply route. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said clashes took place overnight between ISIS fighters and rebels inside the walls of Mariha town. ISIS swept through rebel-held territory early on Friday in a shock offensive in Aleppo province, cutting off the main road between Mariha and Azaz 20 kilometers to the northeast near the Turkish border. The surprise advance came as the extremist group faced an offensive by US-backed Kurdish Arab Alliance in its own heartland of Raqqa province further east. To the east in Raqqa province, warplanes from the US-led coalition also conducted airstrikes on ISIS positions north of Raqqa city. The UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs Stephen O'Brien has voiced grave concern at the current upsurge in violence across Syria and its devastating impact on civilians. O'Brien called for an immediate end to the sieges by warring Syrian parties, which have blocked humanitarian aid and caused starvation.
I sat down at Dr. Mazin's bedside as he struggled for life with appalling and severe brain, abdominal and facial wounds after he was struck by an airstrike on Al-Quds Hospital in eastern Aleppo on 27th April, as he was bravely himself saving lives. A bare whisper is all he could muster. Please, peace. The Syrian government has severely curtailed the UN's ability to reach those in need. A convoy and assessment mission to Daraya, where 4,000 civilians have been besieged for almost 4 years, scheduled for the 12th of May, had to be aborted due to unconscionable last-minute restrictions imposed by government security forces.
Still to come in our program, scuffles between right-wing nationalists and anti-racism protesters break out in Melbourne, Australia. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching the news here in English. More than 50,000 people were trapped in Fallujah as an offensive to push the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant group from the Iraqi city intensified. Hundreds of people fled on Friday as humanitarian conditions rapidly deteriorated, with Iraqi forces continuing to surround the city, determined to flush out the ISIL fighters inside. The UN said nearly 800 people had escaped over the past week, but most of those were from the outskirts of the city, where ISIL control was weaker. Iraqi military officials insisted that safe corridors will be established to allow civilians to flee, but residents said ISIL checkpoints along the city's main roads have made it nearly impossible to escape. Iran's new parliament has convened its first session. New members of parliament were sworn in, with top government and military officials attending the ceremony. Elected in February and April runoff, the 290-seat assembly replaces one dominated by hardliners suspicious of détente with the West and who curb pragmatist President Hassan Rouhani's plans to liberalize the economy and raise lackluster productivity. Rouhani addressed the parliament, focusing his speech on reforms, economy, and fighting unemployment. He also said Iran will aim for an 8% economic growth and will soon regain its previous oil export level. Saudi Arabia and Iran have failed to reach a deal on arrangements for Iranians to attend this year's Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca, with officials from both countries trading accusations on who was to blame for the impasse. Saudi officials accused their Iranian counterparts of walking out of talks early on Friday, despite what they said were offers for solutions to the Iranian demands. Saeed Ohadi, the head of Iran's office that organizes the pilgrimage, earlier told Iran state television Press TV that his country will not send pilgrims to Saudi Arabia unless their safety is ensured. Ohadi also said the lack of a unified decision by Saudi officials was causing the delay in the agreement. Moving on to Africa, Boko Haram's reign of terror over the last 2 years has forced more than 150,000 Nigerian refugees to flee to neighboring Niger for safety. Most have settled in the Difa region along the country's main road. But cross-border attacks by militants, along with a lack of basic necessities, has left people vulnerable. More details in this report.
Boko Haram attacked Busam Abdullahi's town in northern Nigeria nearly 2 years ago. But her memories are fresh. She was terrified of dying. Instead, she and her 2 daughters were kidnapped. Hundreds of other girls from the town were also taken. What followed was 3 months of hell.
Am say adin jaro gasana mare da fara gade ta na aw kiji tare andero galo da matodi ya afi matodi ba ande wahala yimlawa da ya andero yilja kalande na sa da ya bundu so kwalle karo kamsai ade.
Busam and her children were eventually rescued. After reuniting with her husband, the family fled across the border to safety in Niger. They are among 150,000 people displaced by Boko Haram who've settled along a single road. Conditions are tough. UNHCR will relocate the family to Siam Forage Camp, but that too will have its challenges.
Nous avons aussi ce délai très court qui est donné pour pouvoir les déplacer le plus tôt possible, et sans compter que c'est une région qui est désertique, vous le constatez, les camions sont mis beaucoup à l'épreuve pour transporter ces populations-là. Et aujourd'hui, si je ne m'abuse, nous sommes autour d'une 40aine de degrés à l'ombre, ce qui ne constitue pas une facilité pour les personnes à besoins spécifiques tels que les enfants, les femmes allaitantes et les femmes enceintes.
Security concerns are growing, as are the requests for relocation. Being reunited and finding shelter in a camp has brought this family much needed comfort. But still, they worry and hope to stay out of danger's way.
The World Health Organization has rejected calls to cancel or postpone the Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro over the Zika virus. It said that canceling or changing the location of the 2016 Olympics will not significantly alter the international spread of the virus. On Friday, 150 medical experts, academics, and scientists sent an open letter to the UN agency saying the Games could speed up the spread of mosquito-borne disease. But the WHO said in a statement that based on the current assessment, there is no public health justification for postponing or cancelling the Games. Zika infection in pregnant women has been shown to be a cause of the birth defect, microcephaly, and other serious brain abnormalities in babies. The agency, which is giving public health advice to Brazil, said pregnant women should stay away from areas with ongoing Zika virus transmissions. Moving on to Australia, police made several arrests as scuffles between right-wing nationalists and anti-racism protesters broke out in the city of Melbourne. The United Patriots Front organized a Stop the Far Left rally, while anti-racism protesters marched under the banner "Moreland says no to racism," in reference to a Melbourne district. Fears of young Australian Muslims being inspired by militants such as the Islamic State and traveling to fight in Iraq and Syria have underpinned support for right-wing groups like UPF and Reclaim Australia. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a recap of our top stories. Last-minute preparations are underway a day ahead of Lebanon's last round of local polls, which will culminate in the north and Akkad. Heavy fighting between ISIS and rebels grip a town in northeastern Syria after a lightning assault by the extremists cut a main supply route. And more than 50,000 people are trapped in Fallujah as an offensive to push ISIS fighters from the Iraqi city intensifies. Those are your top stories for today. I'm Linda Tamim and I wish you all a very nice weekend.
وجه نداء صادقا
كل أمل ونجاح